What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. A lot of national hype building. Josh Pate on campus yesterday watching the Canes practice. We are seeing Joe Klatt, McElroy, all the top college football people are jumping on the Canes bandwagon. Should we be concerned about this? Are they onto something? What does this all mean? Is this all the same old hype? We will dig deep into that. Also, the latest camp buzz. So you get a better feel for what's going on, who's flashing, what the team is looking like getting into that Gator game. First, talking about some folks that are never all hype, always all substance. That is Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anijar and Levine. All right, Pete, hop in.
Looking very professional today, D.
I know I didn't have time to change, so had to give him the office look here, but we're all business. We're not dealing with hype. Well, I guess we are dealing with hype. We're going to get to the business and the bottom line of it with all the stuff that you're hearing. I mean, you had the idea for this pod, Pete, and I think it makes sense just because of the relentless nature of those clips and those quotes hyping up the Hurricanes. I mean, that's usually my job to do, and it doesn't always turn out well, but it seems like the buzz is more than just a couple voices here and there.
Yeah, you said it best. I mean, it's not only you, but us as Canes fans generally kind of get ourselves hyped up over, I want to say, baseless facts. I mean, a lot of times they aren't facts, but I think it's a little bit different this year because we're hearing it from, quite frankly, people who are respected, right, in the media and people who have their pulse across college football, right? I think one of the reasons a lot of times maybe Miami, we think it's disrespect, but unfortunately the last 10 to 15 years, it's been pretty spot on, right? But you're looking at some of these voices here, and we'll go one by one here, a few clips to play for you all. But it's interesting to see how, I don't want to say it's the narrative, but I think especially the last few weeks here, as these analysts are diving into the rosters across college football, and I think they're kind of realizing, wow, Miami had a great portal run, but you combine that with some of the things that you're building on from last year, which obviously it was not great win-loss on the field, but there are very important building blocks from this team last year, especially in the trenches there, the offensive line, Ruben Bain coming back after his freshman year last year. So I think that's why it's a little bit different in terms of the hype that we're seeing nationally.
Yeah, I think we deal a lot with projections, right? In the past, we've had a lot of projections that were baked into our optimism. In 2021, we were projecting that De'Ara King would come back from his injury okay, and that Manny would fix the defense that was really his defense. 2022, we were projecting that Van Dyke would pick up right where he left off with a new offensive coordinator, that Mario would fix the offensive line like that. 2023, we were projecting that a new offensive coordinator would fix TVD, right? And all the problems would be solved and he'd go back to what he was during a 6-game stretch. Hype based on projection is a little tricky because you're hoping and wishing. With this team, you're talking about Cam Ward, who is already good, who already has market value. David Martinez, who's already good. Xavier Restrepo is already a 1,000-yard receiver. Jacoby George already an 800-yard receiver. An offensive line that's already proven to be one of the best in the country. Ruben Bain, Tyler Barron, Akeem Messidor, Elijah Olsen. These guys have already been dominant pass rushers. So the projection part of this is a lot less, and I think that's why you are seeing national media, Vegas, you name it, hop aboard the Canes bandwagon because we're not just projecting these guys to be good. All you got to do is pop in last year's film and you see what these guys are all about.
So we'll start here. The first clip we're going to play here is Greg McElroy with Colin Cowherd, who, listen, Colin, he talks college football pretty regularly on his show. He's one of the national guys who I think does a pretty good job of it. Doesn't just talk about the SEC, right? So he's over there on the West Coast. So he's talking here with Greg McElroy, and we'll hear his thoughts on the Canes this year.
You're going to say I'm crazy. I know this. I'm comfortable with this. I've been singing the praises all off season. I did this last year for a team and it ended up working out. I love Miami this year. A lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, it's Miami. We do this every year. You know, the same people that are saying that right now are the same people that said, well, why are we building up Texas? Texas hasn't done anything since 2009. Why are you continuing to say that they're going to be good this year? Because they were. On paper, Texas going into last year was great. Now it's about allowing it to come to fruition. Miami on paper is great. Now it's just about, can they take the next step as a program and not beat themselves? This was one of the best teams in America in the first half of the season last year. They've upgraded a quarterback with Cam Ward. He doesn't turn it over. They couldn't score in the red zone with any regularity last year. Well, what helps in the red zone? Quarterback run game. Cam Ward can run it. They went and got the best running back available in the portal in Damian Martinez. And that was kind of a revolving door of players last year with 3 or 4 different guys that were all solid. None have rushed for 1,200 yards in the season like Damian Martinez did last year. The offensive line was a strength last year. It's a strength again. They get their top 2 wideouts back. Defensively, they have the best edge defender in the ACC who's only going into his sophomore year in Ruben Bain. They added 3 more 5 stars and a couple guys in the portal. They are stocked. I think people are going to look at them and say, well, here we are again. We always pump up the blue bloods. I think Miami's extremely capable with the personnel they have. And I'd be surprised if they're not in the mix in the ACC and ultimately in the mix for the playoff.
So I thought it was interesting there, D. He compared, Miami to Texas last year, which I thought was, obviously we saw what Texas ended up doing. And he said people kind of get up in arms when you hype up Miami the same way that you do with Texas. But look at what Texas did last year. Obviously mentioned Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, called Ruben Bain the best pass rusher edge guy in the ACC. So very positive comments there from McElroy, which, again, McElroy's not a guy. We understand how some of the media, national media types are, fine bombs of the world, right? Where they say crazy stuff to catch a rise out of the fan bases out there. But McElroy's a guy who's well studied across the country, and I think very interesting comments from him there.
Yeah, and a national perspective. And I think one thing that he kind of alluded to with some of the comparisons he was making is the Blue Bloods do come back. It's just a matter of how long, right? So a team like Michigan obviously had a head start when you hired a premium coach and Jim Harbaugh, who I'm not saying that we have that caliber of proven coach who's been in Super Bowls and that sort of thing. But Michigan was down for a long, long time, and Michigan had not won a championship since before we came back the last time, winning the national championship. Texas, down for a very long time, coming back and playing in the playoff. Washington, Washington had a flash here or there under Chris Peterson, but Washington was really not where they were since 2000 for a long, long time. I mean, they had a couple moments, but they really weren't what they became with Michael Penix. So you do see these national championship type programs eventually break through. Tennessee, another one with a long, long period of suffering and then a return. So the Blue Bloods do come back. That doesn't mean Miami is going to come back, but I think looking at it with that broader perspective and then seeing the individual pieces where you're not saying, okay, Leonard Taylor showed flashes, we're projecting him to be a dominant player down in, down out. Or James Williams was a big recruit, showed some flashes, we're projecting him to be a great safety. These are guys, or Tyler Van Dyke had, a good stretch of play at one point. These are guys that have put together full seasons, in some cases multiple full seasons, Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, for example, of top performance. So I don't think it's a stretch to expect those guys to be what they have been in the past with an offensive line that is now proven to be a top unit. You're not just resting on Miraball's laurels or Cristobal and saying they had good offensive lines in the past. You could say this was a good offensive line last year. I think that just all makes it a little more real.
Next up here, we have Josh Pate, who I think we both agree does as good of a job as anybody across the country. And it seems like he always has some love for the Canes. So interesting comments here from him as I will play it right now.
They got the week 1 pressure cooker up in Gainesville. Miami's one of the only teams that says up in Gainesville when they refer to Florida. But they play 3 teams in the top 25 in the playoff odds. Not a murderer's row at all. They get Virginia Tech at home the 27th of September. That's a Friday night game, by the way. Where else would you want to be? Down in Miami, actually, a lot of people would claim that their social life's more important. Not us, though. College football is our social life in the fall. Get to the game, if you're down there for that Virginia Tech game, there is only one team on this schedule you're looking at right now that is in the JP poll top 20, and that's Florida State, and they get them at home on October 26th. Notice they go to Louisville the week before, but they have a bye before that. Louisville is coming off 4 straight games. So 2 of their toughest games back-to-back there, but they got a bye in between, or they got a bye before Louisville, and Louisville is off 4 straight. So they got a little situational advantage there. You know, the best case scenario for Miami this year is actually 12-0. When you look at how workable the schedule is and you look at how relatively loaded the talent roster is, and they could have a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback, there's certainly a 12-0 in there. There's certainly an 8-4 in there as well. But here's what's wild. 8-4 being their worst case is an improvement record-wise over last year. I believe, Jesse, didn't they win 7 last year? So if the worst case is an improvement, those are really high standards. But I think it's warranted with this team. I got Miami going 11-1 this year. And you can make of that what you will, because that sends them to the ACC championship game probably. That may very well lock them into a playoff spot regardless of what happens in the ACC championship game. I got very high expectations for this team this year. I know they probably don't love hearing that down there because everyone wants you to trash them this time of year and keep them under the radar.
So a few things there from Josh Pate. One, he talks about how the schedule sets up well, how have a bye before that Louisville game, and Louisville is going to have 4 straight games before that, so they're not going to they're going to have a tough stretch in that month leading up to it. But then he talks about how he believes Miami's floor of an 8-win season is still an improvement over which. If Miami wins 8 games this year, I don't think that the fans will accept that. I don't think we would obviously be very happy about that. We talked about that yesterday on the live show with Mike Ryan, but Josh Pate, another guy nationally who has very high expectation. And he's someone who's been around, right? So he's had a chance to see it up close, and he's not just seeing Miami. He's going around the country now. So he sees what it's supposed to look like compared to other places. D.
Yeah, I think you talk about the schedule, you talk about the roster. The question marks really come from the outside, at least from the outside, with the head coach. You saw that in the Athlon story. Pate's obviously a believer in Coach Cristobal, has a good relationship with him. And what I'd say is this: I understand frustration and skepticism based on what happened last year. Georgia Tech, I mean, the overall losing record at Miami, these are things that, what can you say about them? They're beyond disappointing. And in the case of the Georgia Tech game, almost unthinkable. What I'd say is Pate's talking about 11-1. There's a coach who's won 12 games in a season, won a Rose Bowl, won 12 games, finished top 5. If you're diminishing that accomplishment, you'd say, well, he had more talent than everybody. He had a better offensive line than everybody. He had a great quarterback, and he was in a conference that wasn't overly strong. Okay. Why doesn't the same thing apply to this Miami Hurricane team? Their schedule's not that tough. Their conference isn't that good. They have the best roster. They have a strong offensive line. They have a strong running game. They have more talent, quite outside of Justin Herbert, who, yes, that's a big one, but you have Cam Ward. But outside of those 2 guys, you have more talent certainly on this Miami team than that Oregon team that won 12 games, just top to bottom overall. Look at the running back room. There was no Damon Martinez on that team. So I understand the skepticism, particularly with just the ability to get the most out of this team. We haven't seen it the last 2 years. As bad as the roster was, I think having a losing record 2 years in is beyond what anybody thought could happen, including the coaching staff. But this is not somebody who has never won at this level with this kind of setup. So if that's the only concern you have, and you feel good about the roster, you feel good about the quarterback, you feel good about the schedule, well, what happened the last time he had that quarterback, schedule, and roster all lined up in this way? That was a 12-win season.
Yep, agreed completely. Now, next up here, we have Joel Klatt. Don't have a video clip to play here, but just going to pull up his quote on Miami. And listen, Joel Klatt's a guy who has not always had glowing reviews for Miami. When last year he was making jokes with Colin Cowherd about the 2-for-1 deals for tickets in the middle of the season last year. But Here's what he had to say. He said 10-2 is an underachievement for the Hurricanes. Mario Cristobal is under an immense amount of pressure with this roster that they have and the schedule they face. This is an 11-1 team all day long. Now, listen, he may be kind of setting things up here the way that he's saying, it would be an underachievement to go 10-2. But either way, he says, like Josh Pate said, 11-1 is kind of what he expects. And again, Joel Klatt's not a guy. Obviously, he played at the Orange Bowl and kind of got beat up a little bit there. So he's not always saying great things about the Canes, but he has high expectations for the team this year.
Yeah, taking that big hit from John Beeson on that interception return, legendary hit by Beeson. He was actually around campus the other day with Josh Pate, not together, but they were both out there watching the Canes. So I think that joke about the 2-for-1 deals, they're going to get their shots in, but there is a little bit of faith. And look, it doesn't hurt these guys to make these projections. It's not like anyone's going to come back at them and say, you overrated the Canes. They'll just move on to the next topic. So it's not like they're betting their lives on this, but they're seeing a lot of the same things that we're talking about here. And when you talk about deals, like Klatt's mentioning the 2-for-1 deal, a lot of deals going on at the Miami Hurricane team store, the official apparel shop of Miami Hurricanes athletics. This is Harry Rothwell from All Canes that you grew up with, now across the street at the Thesis, literally right across from campus on South Dixie Highway. You see the website, you see Samson. They got all kinds of new gear. We've talked about the slides. We talked about the 10% off deal for students. Pete, go to the private chat here and pull up this tweet because there's a extremely exciting new item here at the Miami Hurricane team store, limited supply. So you better do this quickly. Click on the link in the description, which is these black jerseys. They're called the Adidas Strategy.
These are really nice. I like these a lot.
Look at that. Look at that. We never actually won in one of those jerseys, maybe since the Virginia Tech game in 2017. Usually we lose when we wear these things, but these will be different because the team is different. That's why we're doing this podcast. Let's go the Adidas Strategy jersey. You can get it in store. You can also get it online, MiamiHTS.com. That's HurricaneTeamStore.com. HTS. Grab the jersey. Supplies are limited.
So we have one more clip here that I'm going to play. JD Pickle from On 3. A guy who also speaks pretty glowingly about Miami, and I think I've seen him post on the CanesInSight message boards, most active forums on the internet for Hurricanes football. Of course, with a 6.9 million postie, so we'll be at 7 million soon there. But JD Pickle, and in specific, he's talking about how he believes that Miami should have been ranked ahead of Clemson in these preseason polls. But I'll play the clip right now.
Probably the biggest issue I have with both this poll and the coaches poll is where they have Miami in relation to Clemson. And I get it. We haven't played any football games just yet, but you look at what they have in-house at Miami and look at what happened last year in Miami and Clemson when they played. Miami beat Clemson. Miami's roster, I wholeheartedly believe, got a lot better. Miami beat Clemson with a lesser caliber of quarterback. No shade to Emory Williams. Cam Ward, we know what he is. He's an upgrade from in the quarterback position. Miami feels that way. That's why they went out and got him. Okay? So, you're telling me that Miami beats Clemson on the field, and then Miami is ranked behind Clemson when it comes to the poll. JD, it's a new season. I understand that, but look at what they have on the roster. What I just said, Miami got better. Clemson, not to say they got worse, but they stayed, in my opinion, relatively the same. Now we'll see what those young playmakers are on the outside for them. I'm not trying to discount that. And Clemson also wasn't always healthy the majority of last season, as was Miami. But the point I'm trying to make here is I think you should flip-flop Miami and Clemson.
So, again, the basis of his point is that he thinks Miami should be ranked ahead of Clemson. And, look, I will say I think people are kind of underrating Clemson a little bit because, obviously, Dabo has his ways with the transfer portal. But he said is there. He said, I believe Miami got better. He does not believe Clemson got better. I think it's, again, we'll see once the pads start popping and the season begins here. But another national voice there who seems like he's high on the Canes.
Yeah, I mentioned projection earlier. Look, I understand why Clemson's a safe bet. They've been the better program than Miami for, almost 20 years now. So, yes, I get like 15 years. So I get why someone's going to side with a team like Clemson over Miami, just based on historical precedent. The same head coach has been there for a long time, proven to be a fantastic program builder. And even in Clemson's off years, they still win games. So their floor is extremely high. But when we talk about projection, if you think Clemson is going to be a great team, you're projecting Cade Klubnik to make a leap that he didn't make last year. You're projecting a young wide receiving group to really make a step up, including some true freshmen. You're counting on a lot of things. You're counting on offensive coordinator Garrett Riley to get this thing rolling. Things that didn't happen last year, you're counting on that to happen for this Clemson team with the same players. Miami, you didn't have Cam Ward, Damian Martinez last year, but they did things. They proved what they could do without the supporting cast. So you don't need Cam Ward to be that much better than he was last year. Like Cade Klubnik needs to get better. You just need Cam Ward to be Cam Ward with better players around him. Same with Damian Martinez. So I think historically, Clemson is a safer bet. But if you're looking at the players and what they did last year, Miami is a safer bet because all of these guys actually produced.
Yeah, let me tell you, it's going to be very interesting to watch Clemson this year, man, because if things don't go right, does Dabo kind of go back on his ways? If they do have a really good season and he's proven correct. My thing with it is, like, not to get too much into Clemson here, but like, if they're not losing too many players to the portal and they are able to develop their guys, then more power to them. I don't know if in today's day of college football, how you can truly, fill certain spots on the roster without going to the portal.
Yeah. I mean, and this is not, the roster is good for Clemson. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like you look at this roster and say they have 3 first-rounders next year or 4 first-rounders. You have a very good linebacker who Francis Mauigoa knocked into Broward County last time they played. Good player. I'm not trying to diminish that. Good secondary, but like, it's not like you're saying, hey, there's Dexter Lawrence, there's Cleveland Farrell, there's all of these guys just lined up, ready to rock and roll. It's good players as opposed to multiple first rounders. So if this is what it's going to be for Clemson, then their talent is not what it was. I think it can get there pretty fast if they open up the portal and land a couple guys and hit on a couple guys, which may be coming through the pipeline. But you can't look at Clemson's roster now and say this is a top 3 talented roster, top 5 talented roster in the country, which it was the years they were rolling. Even projecting internal development, which I'm sure Dabo is, I don't see that. I see some good young defensive linemen that were pushed around by Miami's offensive line last year. I see a good running back in Mafe who is not at the end, or really not even Damian Martinez, but is good. I see a quarterback who doesn't have outstanding physical traits in Klubnik compared to like a Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson. I see talented receivers with totally unproven. Where are the bright blue chip players on this Clemson team based on what we saw, which is actually a nice transition, Pete, to what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, so we'll talk about this top 100 list that ESPN put out for their top 100 college football players for the upcoming season. I think this one's interesting, D, because this isn't mock draft stuff. A lot of the mock draft stuff is projecting NFL stuff, right? So Canes fans say, well, Leonard Taylor was in the first round mock drafts. TVD was in there a few years ago, even though a lot of that stuff, the scouts were never expecting those guys, expecting a Tyler Van Dyke to be, a first round pick at the time. He was showing up in mock drafts, right? This is the college football top 100 list, right? So this is, what they've done in college. Some of this is projections. You'll see, they have Nico Iamaleava at 92, and he only threw for 300 plus yards last year. But 5 guys on this list, starting with Jalen Rivers at number 97. I don't necessarily agree with this first line here that he's widely considered a first round pick, but you and I have talked about it. I expect him to be easily a top 3 to 4 round guy, and really just a solid player. Has played all across that line for Miami.
And look, this is the only Miami offensive lineman on the list. I see other top 100 lists that have CeCe Mauigoa. And if you ask me, my personal opinion, Inez Cooper might be the best one. He certainly pushed around Clemson, to name an opponent, last year. So it could be any one of those 3. I like Rivers. Love his everything about him. He's one of my favorite players. I agree. He's probably not a first-round pick, just athletic-wise, but he is a guy that will go day 2 probably if he stays healthy. And maybe he pushes into the latter half of round 1 just based on his versatility. But big recruit, great size, proven production. You turn on the tape and see it. You can see him against Texas A&M blocking those 5 stars. Smart, improved. He's getting coached by a proven coach. There's not a lot of projection here like there was with a Leonard Taylor. What Jalen Rivers is going to do off the field. What he's done consistently on the field. It's not flashes, it's production. And he's getting coached. So I'm totally comfortable with Jalen Rivers as a premier player in the country at his position.
All right, next up here, Xavier Estrepo coming in at number 66. I don't think many people would argue this one across the country. He was as productive as anyone last year, as reliable as anyone. And not to go through this again, but I want to remind people that there were a legion of Canes fans out there who wanted him to transfer. So I'll never understand it, D.
Me neither, but we've beaten that drum. But number 66 in the country, not by Canes fans, not by Tyler Van Dyke. This is a list made by national writers. There's actually a consensus of national writers, I believe, for the CSBN list. They use like 4 or 5 people. But with Restrepo, similar to what we said about Jalen Rivers, obviously the body's different, but it's not projection. It's not saying this was a 5-star recruit in high school. He played a little bit. He flashed. Now we're projecting him to be this guy. There's a guy who was a 1,000-yard receiver last year with inconsistent quarterback play at best. You've seen it on film. You've seen it in big games. Look at Texas A&M, for example. He's going to work. He's going to be better than he was last year because just based on work ethic, as is with Rivers, intangibles A+ with both of those guys. So what are you really projecting here? This is a guy that everyone can see as one of the best slot receivers in the country. And if he stays healthy, he'll get open, he'll catch a ton of balls, and he'll run after the catch, and he'll block.
All right, next up here, Cam Ward, number 56, rated, and I've seen him rated higher in some other lists, D, but really solid ranking for Miami's quarterback here.
Yeah, and again, this guy had no help at Washington State. So if you just take the player of Cam Ward, not with TBD, you were saying, man, if TBD can just do what he did for this little period, the whole season, he'll be great. Ja'Cory Harris, same thing. If he can just do what he did for this little 5-6 game stretch over the course of a season, if this offensive coach can fix him, we'll have a player. Ward's done this at every single level. He was extremely productive at Incarnate Word. He was very productive at Washington State. His season last year, passing the ball would be the all-time single-season record for Miami passing the ball as far as yards. And that was with no offensive line, no running game, and let's say slightly worse receivers. It could be more of a gap. His receivers are good, but these are really good receivers he has here. So, yeah, you're projecting him to be better with better players around him, but even when he had bad players around him, he was really good. So I think I know I'm harping on that, but I'm trying to explain why this hype is different and why it's coming from so many different places as opposed to just, me and Pete just kind of getting people excited for the year.
Can't wait for that preseason pod in a couple of weeks, D. That should be fun talking about hyping people up. Next up here, 10 spots higher, Damian Martinez coming in at number 46.
Yeah, with Martinez, same story. This is a guy who was 18 years old, ran for almost 1,000 yards. 19 years old last year, runs for over 1,000 yards, over 1,100 yards, 6.1 yards per carry both years. Had a great offensive line, had an offensive line that was drafted first round, but it's not going to get worse at Miami. It's in fact going to get a little better, and the quarterback's going to get a little better. He had DJU last year, who was an extremely limited passer, and Ward's just a better player than DJU. He put up much better stats in the same conference. Watch the film, just a more dynamic player. So I'm totally fine with this rating. And after some of the camp buzz, which we'll get to in a second on Martinez, I think he'll live up to the hype.
And then coming in as Miami's highest ranked player, Ruben Bain at number 43. Personally, I think he's a top 20 player, top 25 player in college football. But I mean, you saw what he did last year. I know you've seen the pictures that he posted the other day about his physical transformation as he continues to do what he needs to do in the weight room. But he comes in at number 43.
And stop me if you heard this before. Elite character, elite work ethic. You expect him to be better. You're not bringing in someone to fix Ruben Bain, or you're not trying to get Ruben Bain to play like he did for a stretch and stretch it over the course of a year because he was lollygagging like, Taylor or other players of that sort. This is a guy who brings it every game. This is a guy who's brought it against top teams, including Clemson. This is somebody who works extremely hard at his craft. Knock on wood, he's been healthy. He could be a top 10 player in the country this year. In fact, if he's healthy, I would project him to be a top 10 player in the country. This is a very pass rusher heavy list. You see Ashton Gillott from Louisville, South Florida guy I've loved since he was in high school. Very good players, actually ranked above Ruben Bain on this list. I think that's underrating Ruben Bain. Ruben Bain's a better player, but he'll have the chance to prove that on the field. James Pierce from Tennessee is the number 1 player on this list, projected number 1 pick in the draft. You see all the tools with him, but Bain was actually probably a more productive player last year, even as a true freshman. So I could see him climb into the top 10 of the postseason list. And, we just named 5 guys. Georgia's the number 1 team in the country. They got 6 guys on this list. So when you have this many guys that are distributed across the team, as a quarterback here, an offensive lineman here, a running back here, a receiver here, pass rusher here, you see the vision. By the way, I've seen other top 100 lists that have CeCe Mauanoa. I believe CVS had CeCe Mauanoa. I saw another list that had Kiko Mauanoa, the linebacker, as a top 100 player in the country. So, we'll see how this plays out. I could easily see one of these receivers that's not Restrepo emerging. I can see Elijah Arroyo. He's a tight end, so that's a little trickier, but I see him emerging. There's a lot of marquee guys. When you play with NCAA football, you see the 90s on the screen. The hype is not just 1 or 2 sources. It's a lot of people, and I think it is real. The question is, can the whole thing come together? Can the team stay healthy? And can you set the tone in that first game and get that momentum positive, as opposed to people questioning whether they really are what everybody else says they are? Because all those expectations externally, if you slip up, especially if you slip up out the gates, that becomes a major negative, because now your disappointment. And people are saying it's the same. Well, Miami, all the same people that are quoting here that are all excited, they turn their back on you real quick. So very, very careful, very important in that first game to prove these guys right, get some wind under your sails. Different challenges will happen. Then you have to deal with more hype if you beat the Gators. But I'd rather deal with that hype than deal with the questioning, because this is a program and a franchise that just needs that boost of confidence, that all the work they've been putting in, all the money they've been spending is for the best. And at the end of the day, the biggest reason why I believe that this is different and the hype is real, we paid for it. And you get what you pay for most of the time in life. Miami's hoping this is one of those times.
It's a great segue, D, to the tweet that you and I were talking about before the show here. Before we get into the camp buzz, we'll put this up real quick here as Josh Newberg posted, and our boy Pete Nakos does a great job of the transfer portal talk and other things, posted the top NIL schools. And what do you know? The Miami Hurricanes and Canes Connection Collective right at the top of the list there. What do you have to say about that?
I have to say that if you want the hype to stay real, canesconnection.com/CIS. You can just click the link in our YouTube page or on our website. I'll take you right to it. If you want to type it up, canesconnection.com/CIS. Get the first month for $1, no matter what price point you enter into. And you'll support this building of a program that is not hype, that is expected to perform well, and is not just something we're waiting for. You can't just wait forever. You got to make things happen. Canes Connection has been doing that. That's why the roster looks like it does. If you want that to continue, a lot of big names still around in recruiting, Jamie French, some other names. You'd love Miami to land. canesconnection.com/CIS. Got a private Zoom call. It is Thursday at 8:00. I will be providing a private Zoom call talking about camps, things I can't say here, so Gators can't cut them up and post them on their own Twitter, because it will be private for Canes Connection members. If you can't make it, but you're a Canes Connection member and you signed up using that link /CIS, we'll email it to you. So you'll get it in your email box. Don't worry if you miss it. It'll be recorded. Exclusive, insider, non-public info, canesconnection.com/CIS. Link in the YouTube, link on our website.
All right, D, we'll wrap things up here with, of course, what everyone is always interested to hear during fall camp. Any buzz, And you guys, we did a stock up video from camp the other day that had a lot of interesting notes in there. Anything from this week that you're hearing that Canes fans should kind of be on the lookout for this year?
Jordan Lyle, no question, is flashing big. He's somebody that can do a lot. He's very, very, his balance is what stands out to him. That's his superpower. He has a little bit of speed. He has some strength, but really an acceleration, all the typical running back things, but the balance stands out the most. He's a true running back. He's not stiff in any way. He will keep his feet unless you really, really take a chainsaw to him. So I think that's one thing that separates him and is allowing him to make a lot of plays and rise up list. Sam Brown, the athleticism, the juice, probably the most juice on the team, even including freshmen. I mean, this guy's special when it comes to his athletic ability. I think that's starting to stand out. Ryan Rodriguez doing a lot of different things, really cementing his place in the top 8 of this team, top 8 or 9 of this team on the offensive line. And Cole McConaughey, this is a dude that's got just great coordination, great flexibility, a lot of tools that he works with. So those are just some guys. And then, we mentioned Frederick a bunch, but these are just some guys to me that are impressing with their skill set. I think are going to help our team.
Listen, not to toot my own horn on the Sam Brown thing, man, but when Miami got him, I said, this is the guy I think is going to take this offense to the next level. It's obviously after Cam Ward, but I just think he brings that different dynamic from that receiver position, the yards after catch, the explosiveness. I mean, when I've seen him in practice, just running, he's gliding, right? And I think that he's got something special to him. I think he's a top 100 type pick this year.
And by the way, Canes Connection members will remember Sam Brown and our interest in him. You heard about it first on those Canes Connection Zoom calls. Cole McConaughey was a name that we had before anybody. The Jordan Lyle momentum when he was committed to Ohio State, that started with us. Just going off names that we're talking about here. If you want to be first to know, you want to be on the up and up, canesconnection.com/CIS. Be part of the solution. Miami's official NIL collective. Be a part of number 6 and also get the best info. It's a win-win.
All right, Canes fans, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We come at you every day, Monday through Friday. And anytime there's a commitment or any big news, we drop instant reaction videos as well. But this train is rolling, man. We're getting closer and closer to August 31st. Keep it locked on CanesInsight.com. Remember, we are now at official Canes Insight on YouTube, way better than Canes Insight 6'3", 6'8", or whatever it was. So we're official now. So CanesInsight.com, like and subscribe. Thank you all for listening. Go Canes.
Go Canes.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you, and nobody do it like Canes Insight. 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 It's Canes Insight.